This is the Final Round Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. And now your host, Chris Markford. Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to episode number 50 of the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast. Excited to have all of you along for the ride with us this evening. It's going to be a fun show. We're going to look back a little bit on the history of Final Round as we celebrate the second anniversary of the program. We've also got Wade Farner joining us, making his first appearance in the show. Matt Stambaugh is going to be joining us as well from down at the shop in Virginia to talk a little bit about the Nostalgia Funny Car win that he was part of with Robin Stambaugh-Schoeman coming away with a win at VMS over the weekend. They went 201 miles an hour in that pass to come away with a win, which was
super cool.
Which was they're moving.
Yeah.
They're moving at that speed. Jason slipping in literally just under the wire. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm better now that you're here.
Oh,
Where'd the Velcro that holds the door open end up?
it's hanging on the wall.
Perfect.
Yeah,
That's exactly where it needs to be.
Right where it needs to be, exactly.
I mean, we know. But yeah, interesting exchange as we went through this afternoon. We found out that things weren't going to align for Robin, so we're going to have Robin on at a later date.
Okay.
And we're going to talk to Robin about driving the Nostalgia Funny Car and her family and their background in drag racing as a whole. Which is going to be a good time. I think that's going to be we're going to shoot for making that November the 1st.
Okay.
I haven't heard back from Ed McCleeft. Hopefully we do.
I didn't know you contacted him.
I shot him a message at I think it was like 20 after 6.
Yep. Okay.
And I did hear back from Matt. He was at the shop, so that's why he couldn't hear his messages going off because he was busy fabricating and building and doing such like so. But we do have Matt on in a little bit. We're going to be talking with Wade. Wade's traveling tonight, so he said we're going to try and keep it short. But he picked up that win in his Camaro that we talked about a couple weeks ago over at New Media. So we'll be able to catch up with him a little bit about that. But first and foremost, the fact that we've done this for 2 years, it doesn't feel like 2 years.
It doesn't feel like 2 years at all, and it's still amazing. So I mean, this is officially episode 50, right? Yeah, it's amazing actually that we're at 50 episodes, quite frankly. And I realize that in theory, if we had done it, let's call it every 2 weeks, we'd be at episode 52 right now, or episode 53 maybe. But hey, I'm still pretty happy we've done it 2 years.
It's a surprise a little.
And people seem to be watching. I mean, I don't think we're getting like a 10 Nielsen rating or anything like that. But I'm still,
they don't worry about stuff like that here.
Right. But I'm still pretty impressed.
Hey, wait, it's Chris. Can I put you in? Doing okay? Can I put you in? Yeah, I don't think they worry a whole lot about the Nielsen ratings here. Or anywhere, really, but in terms of internet shows.
Right. And, I will say that every week, I won't say every week, but almost every week or every other week, I end up talking to somebody and end up being surprised. Today I was at Sam Levitro's shop, and he's talking to me, and he's like, podcast episode 48 with Ryan Bonifero, and I'm like, the episode number? And he's like, I just got done watching the whole thing from start to finish. He goes, he's like, I watch all the time, and it's nice to hear that all right, well, people are actually watching the show, so it is nice to hear.
It's a surprise sometimes, right?
It is. It is.
It's like, why are you watching it?
They're definitely not watching it to listen to me talk, for sure. But that's why we have guests on the show like Wade, because people want to hear what other people have to say, not just me.
100% true. Wade Farner joining us. Wade's got all sorts of stuff going on. He's traveling. There's talk of perhaps an event this weekend, and you've got that super fast Camaro in the garage still. There's still plenty of opportunities to get out and run that. So first and foremost, where are you traveling to right now?
Well, actually, right now I'm just back at work. I had some problems here, so I had to return to work. So that's where I'm at right at the moment.
Oh, geez.
So unfortunately, that's how it goes sometimes.
Are you going to get the car done for this weekend and make it down to Woodstock?
I'm not sure. We're going to try. It's going to be for the boy to run. It'll be the boy running the compact this weekend if we make it.
That's awesome.
It will not be me. I'm going to be letting him do some stuff. He just turned 16, so it's going to be his turn now for a little while.
Awesome.
That's very cool.
Are the keys going to be in his hand for the drag car too?
He really wants them. It's going to be a little while for that. I think that's going to take a little while yet to convince me on that.
I mean, with the year that you have this year, it's going to make it a little bit tougher, a little bit more compelling to keep the keys to that ride. Tell us about the win at New Media and how the season's been.
Well, it was actually at Mason-Dixon.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
It was a good year. It started out early. I struggled because I hadn't been in the car in a while and trying to get the suspension back set up and some of the other things. And we went to 650 index racing, and I really struggled to be competitive the first couple races we went to. And finally, I got some help from some other racers and getting some pinion angles changed and some other things, and not really changing motor components. We got competitive, and now we're running really well. Like I said, finally did get a win. We were out last week, lost the first round driver error, but we'll be back out the 28th, and then I think the 3rd will be the last 2 events for the year for that.
What were you running before you got into the 650 class there?
I did some just bracket racing.
Yeah.
And then, which I've still been doing. On weekends I want to go test or whatever, I'll go to our local 8-mile track, and I'll test it there and, just try to dial it in. And it's a little different because they use a regular tree and we're running on a pro tree, but it's good for both learning experience and seat time.
Sure. I mean, there's no replacement. There's no amount of money that can buy seat time. That's for sure. And so as long as you get acclimated.
And it helps to have people that have knowledge. Like I said, I'm all for listening to people. A lot of older people really help me out. Hey, your car's not leaving correct. You need to check your pinion angle, and just little things like that to really go a long way in the sport. In
terms of the car itself, did you build that car? Did you buy it? What's the car all about?
I actually bought the car 12 years ago. But since then I put it's my motor, my transmission, rear end. But I bought the car from another gentleman, but I've pretty much redid the whole thing since then.
Have you done all the work on the motor and transmission yourself?
I got a couple friends that do. So, Let's See Racing Engine does the engine work for me. He does really good work. So, I go there and help him put it together and mess with it. So,
sure.
I have my hands on it all the time. It doesn't pretty much leave my possession.
But does that give you a little bit of advantage in terms of when you finally get good information that you can use? They talk about, adjust this, adjust that. You're familiar enough with the car where you've done so much of that work on your own where you can feel comfortable diving into it and take what they're advising and make it work for you in terms of saying, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Can somebody come and spin the wrenches on this thing? Can somebody come and adjust this, adjust that, tear this down, put this back together, whatever?
It really does help, and I can pretty much, I've owned that car for a long time, and this year's the most passes I've made in it for a consecutive amount of time, and I can make a pass and I can tell you whether I thought it was good, bad, if it pulled a little bit, where it spun the tire, what adjustments to make, and that, which is a major plus. And like I said, it just comes down to seat time and owning the car myself, whether fuel pressure and some things like that.
I know you through the demolition derby side of things. I didn't even know that you had a drag car. How'd you get into the sport as a whole?
That's a great question.
My dad, my parents were big into drag racing when I was a kid, and I bought the car a good many years ago and messed around a little bit, and then I got back into the demolition derby stuff a good bit, and I just decided this year I was going to dig it back out and run it some more and kind of take some time away from the derby world for a little bit, do something different. And it's been fun. I really enjoyed it, and I was actually able, like I said, lucky enough to get a win and do well.
Well, it certainly did pay off. We talked about the seat time, and it was certainly worth digging the thing out.
Sure.
Making that adjustment, do you feel? You said early on it was a little bit tough to almost get acclimated to that 650 dial time, but now, do you feel? I don't know. Is it fair to say more comfortable running that versus running open bracket or some of the other stuff that you've done before?
Yeah, I'm actually really good. Like I said, we went back last week. I was really confident going back into it after winning, 2 weeks before in a full field. It just, I know I can be competitive. I got to get a little better with reaction time. I'm still leaving on a foot brake. A lot of guys are leaving on a trans brake, so I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage there. But, that's adjustments I'm going to make for next year. I'm going to make some changes to the car. And I just didn't want to tear it apart this close to the season, and I wanted to enjoy the rest of the year and go from there.
Right. You have a 4/10? Is that a 5/10 Pro Tree or 4/10 Pro Tree?
It's a 400 Pro Tree, yep.
So on a foot brake, if you could get any sort of light on a 4/10 Pro Tree on a foot brake, I'd be pretty impressed.
Yeah, I'm averaging, like, the night I won, I was right around, like, a 100, which, isn't great, but that's okay. And I'm not deep staging either. I've tried deep staging, and it just doesn't. The car, I get a little better reaction time, but you lose a tenth on the 8th mile, and I'll just take it the other way.
Right.
So
right. Yeah,
it's been tough. That's the only thing that I really think that I'm at a disadvantage at this point that I could do better is the reaction time, but it'll come.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily on you, but really on the car itself. Like I said, in the end, it's still on you because you're obviously the crew chief and the driver, right? But yeah, at the end of the day, it's like, you put a trans brake in that car, and that'll make a huge, huge difference to your reaction times.
Yeah, and like I said, the car was built. It's a street car, and I still can drive it on the street. It wasn't ever really built to go 650 index racing.
Right.
It's just gotten faster and faster. I've changed some things, and I'm like, I'm going to try for this year. And like I said, we started out 670s, couldn't be real competitive. And last time we were out, it averaged 651, 650 with a 0.
Wow.
We're right there now, so I can be fairly competitive. Like I said, other than reaction time, I feel confident when we go that we're going to have a good showing. The car does what it does as long as the driver doesn't make mistakes, and that's usually what happens.
That is a big part of any type of racing. You can have the best of the best, but if the driver doesn't know how to handle it, it doesn't matter, right?
Right.
Yeah, like the night I won. The car did what it was supposed to, and I just didn't mess the rest of it up. It just all worked out well that evening. So
I have to say, I love hearing that you're working on the car, making it go faster and faster. That really is how I will say at least most of the old school people got into drag racing, right? They started with whatever car it was and eventually made it faster, and then it got to the point where it was really too fast to drive it on the street, and then they made it full-time into a race car. That's really hard to do these days for let's call it the younger kids, if you will. Just because of the fact that, it's hard to basically take a 2008 Toyota Camry and make it faster and faster until the point where you make it into a race car, right?
Correct.
So yeah, that's I love hearing that, at least that there's still people out there that take an interest in it. And your car is it a 78?
It's an 80.
An 80, okay, yeah. And those are cars that you can do that. My first car was a 78 Malibu, and it had a V6 in it, and took the V6 out and put a 350 in it, and same general thing. And those are easy cars to work on, and probably the last of the cars that you could actually make into a race car really is that kind of era, if you will.
Running out of time there.
Yeah.
It's nice you can actually lift the hood and I can actually work on it. I don't have to. It's actually take all the transmission bolts out of it, the bell housing bolts, without even getting under the car. It's got some room that you can actually move around and work on the car and be able to make changes and still.
Unlike today's cars where you want to try and get to a spark plug, and that means you got to drop the engine to get a spark plug out of it.
Yeah. Now, I'm not sure how many more years I'll continue to run this car. I don't know. I'm not going to get to the point. I'm not going to cut the car up. If it continues, then I may just buy, if I keep going, maybe a full-blown race car.
Yeah.
It's something, I still want to keep the car as good as it is. It's 80% still original paint.
Wow.
It's a very nice car. It's been preserved very well over its years, so.
You said it was still street legal. Do you take it to show and shines and stuff in the area?
Oh, yeah, I have. Now, this year I haven't really. I can literally go home right now and unload it out of the trailer and drive it down to the store. It wouldn't be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It does have 13-to-1 compression, so I'm running race gas, so I try not to waste $9 gas if I don't really have to.
Right. Well, I guess that makes sense.
Right.
It's perfectly capable of it. You can get in and go. All the headlights work, turn signals. We scaled the other car the other night. They weighed 3,590 pounds with me in it. So it's a full-blown car. It's still got a stereo in it.
That's cool.
The Camaro does?
Yeah.
You listen to 6.5 seconds of your favorite song on the way to the finish.
I say,
yeah, you can't hear it real well, but it's in there. If you really wanted to listen to it, it has full exhaust on it. It's got 3-inch exhaust, and it goes out to a 3.5-inch tailpipe. I left it it's basically still street legal.
But what are your aspirations with the car? I mean, these little things like the extra weight with a stereo and you've got the regular exhaust and stuff on it that make it street legal. What are your aspirations with the car in terms of trying to dial that 650 down? You just leave it as it is? I mean, I understand you don't want to cut it up, but there's still things you can do to make it faster.
Well, maybe a bigger power plant at some point. That would be the next thing. Maybe step it up to, get the car in the mid-30s. But that's, that'd be the next thing. I mean, it's got a good rear. The transmission's good. I mean, that would be it. It's only a 360 cubic inch motor. It's not a real big small block. So,
right.
I mean, considering people are out there now with 434s and a lot bigger cubic inch than I have, so
well,
that would be the next thing.
In the 650 index class, I'm assuming that that's no throttle stops, right?
No throttle stops and no kind of electronics.
Right.
You can use a trans brake, but that's it. No nothing else.
Yeah. And so I'm assuming Mason-Dixon, so they have their own index class.
Correct. They run it about 15 times a year. They have like a street night, they call it, on a Saturday, and They have some real street cars which are really fast. They run like high fours, and then they have like a quick 16, then they have the 650 index.
Okay, and do they allow any breakouts at all?
Nope. If you go under 650, you're done.
Okay.
That's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and I will say
it's
some places
it's qualified. They give you 2 qualifying runs, and that's how they bracket the field. It's all based on qualifying.
Yep.
It's you pull up, they'll tell you who you run, you and him. Usually the fastest goes against the slowest. Just like any other sort of pairings. And
yeah, and they it's a normal bracket from there, right? So let's call it a 16 car field. You got to win 4 rounds and you win the race type of thing.
Yep, and the guys, all of them are very tough. I mean, that class has some of the best drag racers I think I've been against, and really nice guys. Everybody gets along well. I mean, the field's usually from 650 to about a 662.
Yeah.
One little mistake and it makes a big difference. So I mean, you got to be on your game on both ends.
Pretty tight.
I have to say, I would love to see. We really haven't seen that make it this far north yet. Mm-hmm. Dragway 42, they have an index class as well, and I think they do a 6.0, 650, 7.0, 750. I'm not sure if they do an 8.0 class or not. But it's really popular. They have a lot of cars, and I kind of feel like it's the it's the chicken and the egg thing, right? I mean, you have the guys that say, well, if you make the class, then I'll come race it. But at the same point in time, you have tracks that are saying, well, if you get enough guys together, we'll make the class for you.
Right.
And, Dragway 42, I think, basically just said, all right, well, we have, 8 guys or whatever it was that was initially interested in doing something like this. So they made the class, and now it's grown. And Crepes, when we were out there, they were running the index classes. I bet you they had 20 cars in each of the index classes. It was really big. And,
well, it just seems like the description of it in our conversation tonight is it's relatively affordable, and it's relatively easy to get into, and it's relatively cut and dried on how to do it. There's not a lot of mystery to it.
This is where super gas back in 1980, when they came up with super gas initially, this is what super gas was meant to be. Super gas was meant to be an index class, low cost, backyard mechanics, fairly easy to get involved. And because NHRA never did anything about the electronics, and IHRA too, I'll say it's partly their fault too, but they were really just following NHRA's lead, and they let electronics continue in the class. Now it's gotten completely out of control, where to run super gas, you have to have a car that has 1,000+ horsepower. Would normally in a quarter mile, instead of running 990, you'd be able to run 750s, and you're running 990 at 170 miles an hour. And the index class is like this. This is the way it was meant to be.
Right.
And the cool thing about it is that it's not only lower cost for the drivers and can be just as competitive, but it's way more fun for the spectators to watch, because the cars leave with the front ends in the air rather than driving away like a street car, like our cars do, because we're on the throttle stop.
Right.
I would love to see.
Is it more relatable too, because you get such a variety of cars?
Well, I guess I would say it can be. I don't know if any of the index classes. My guess is that at this point in time, they probably. And Wade, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. They probably let any body style. So you're going to have. Go ahead.
You can't be an all sprinter or a dragster, but you can have any kind of door car.
Yeah.
I mean, any car. It can be a full-blown race car, street car. I mean, you kind of can have whatever you want.
Yeah. But again, and that was part of the allure of Supergas too, right? You had all different makes and models. You could see anything you could possibly imagine. You could have Corvettes, you could have Willys, you could have Vega wagons, you could have everything. And I mean, that's the really cool thing about the index. Or I guess I'll call it just the classes in general like that, is that you have a wide variety of cars that people would look and say, hey, that's a cool car. I really like that. And I really hope that it gets to the point where some of the tracks up here decide to give it a try. And not just, all right, yeah, we're going to run it like twice a year type of thing, but really say, all right, yeah, we're going to run it every other week. And we know when we start off, we're only going to have 4 cars. But if we start running this thing, we'll get more following and more cars will come and do it.
Right.
Yeah, and they have it set up, it's like $40 to run, and it's 80% payback. So you actually... It doesn't cost you long to enter, and you get some money back if you do win. I mean, the returns, obviously minimal, but it's still better than some classes.
Yeah, well, and that's part of the problem that we have now, too, with Supergas, is the fact that guys have so much money invested in their operations that they don't want to come out and race for $500. $500 is like, yeah, you're not getting me off the couch. $1,000, all right, yeah, I'll come out for $1,000. But... So, I mean, now guys are willing to basically have really high entry fees to run for more money because at the end of the day, your entry fee is really, it's negligible when it comes to the cost of running that operation. When you take into account, I got my stacker trailer and my toter home, and I just drove however many hundreds of miles to get to the track, and all the rest of it. It's like, hey, who cares if my entry fee is $200? I mean, it makes no difference.
Right. Minimal change. Wade, I know you're on a bit of a tight schedule tonight, and I don't want to keep you. At 8 cars at $40, it's $320. That means you're racing for $250, which breaks down to about 28 gallons of gas. Which
that's right.
Well, it's like any other sport. You don't do it to really make the money on it. You do it for the fun and everything else. And like I said, there's a lot of great people. I've met a lot of good people. I mean, we go to the track, we cook on the grill, and make a day or an evening of it. It's really enjoyable.
Awesome. Is there any?
If you have a good day, that's all the better. And if you bring it home and it's not broke, then you still won.
Right.
So.
I think it's cool that your drag car weighs almost as much as your postal Mopar rear end does.
Yeah, they're. My Cadillac still has quite a little bit of a weight to it too. It's still sitting in the driveway. I made one derby this year, and that was it. So I was able to climb back in at one time. Other than that, like I said, I've been really enjoying this. So
nice.
And I'll translate for all the drag racing fans out there. That's demolition derby talk right there.
So, I'll show you a picture of a postal Mopar later.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Is there anybody that you want to mention before we let you go?
Just, I got the friends and family, the girlfriend, the fiance. I mean, if it wouldn't be for them and the kids helping, going along and enjoying it, and my brother helps out a good bit, and some local friends. I mean, that's what makes it all possible. I mean, it's you need the help when you go to the track. Getting you into the good groove, all the little things.
Awesome.
I mean, that's the biggest part. And like I said, the woman letting me do it without too much. She's supportive, and that's a plus too.
Well, Wade, I appreciate you coming on and making time for us tonight. Congratulations again on the win, and we look forward to seeing your boy run this weekend in Woodstock.
All right, well, like I said, I'm not sure if he's going to make it. We'll try our luck. We'll see how it goes, but, we got a lot to do, and it's a little much for his first one. He's never been behind the wheel at all, and I was like, I'm not sure that'd be your best, but we'll see. We'll play it by ear and see what Mom has to say on that one.
Can't hurt.
But, hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate you having me on. It was really an honor.
You bet, man. You earned it. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Wade.
All right, thank you. Have a
See
good
ya.
day.
Thanks. Take care.
Wade, one of the nicest guys you can come across.
Yeah, he's a super nice guy.
Yeah, real nice dude. He's got some good-looking cars, too.
I would say, so now Woodstock is a demolition derby?
Yeah, it's Chaos in the Valley 9 is Saturday.
Okay.
Yep, I got to go down and announce and tape that. And he ran there last year with his Cadillac, and it got lit up a little bit. But he had enough car left where he got to run it. He ran it twice, maybe even 3 times last year, and then I think he's run it once this year. So there's still plenty of car left. The Pulse Mopar rear end is a rear end that's built specifically for demolition derby applications.
Yeah.
So it's got a really big clad around the pumpkin that helps fill in the arches more. So as the back end collapses and the frame bends, it helps hold it up, and it's got It's got, Molly tubes and giant axles inside it. So it's a very, very heavy rear end. Pretty heavy duty. You invest some pretty serious money to have one, but you never have to buy another one after that.
But when you're going to Chaos in the Valley 9, is that what it was called?
Yeah.
When you're going to Chaos in the Valley 9, you can't take a knife to a gunfight, right?
Last year, Chaos in the Valley 9, which is done as a...
8.
Yes, last year, Chaos in the Valley... Well, that would have been 7 because I had one in the spring, too.
Oh, okay.
They number them like they do UFC fights.
Oh, okay.
So this is their
We
fifth.
need to do that with drag racing, honestly.
I think it'd be
rather than just be, we're going to the races this weekend. What are you doing? Oh, we're going to, the Flame Fight at Empire 12 or whatever it would be.
A lot of shows number them annually, and these guys are doing it like UFC, so they're 2 a year. So anyway, they're done as a benefit for Thomas Brook Volunteer Fire Department.
Oh.
And last year, the compact division, which is Luminas, we've seen Luminas and Grand Ams and Berettas and stuff that are converted over rear-wheel drive for drag racing.
Yep.
Well, they're also really good for demolition derby, along with, Fox Body Mustangs, the 80s Mustangs and stuff. They had 50-some entries, and it was $5,000 to win. They had so many entries, and they had generated so much money, they put an extra $3,000 on top. So it went from $5,000 to $8,000 to win in one night. And Matt Davidson looked like he was going to win it. Hands down, he was going to win it. And he got second. And this dude that won it just never expected it. And then he found out that there was extra money in the pool. It was unreal. They raffled a car off. We had Josh Wilkins on Monday on Crash Course.
Okay.
He built a car to raffle off as a benefit for Thomas Brook. But they had a rule that you had to run in the feature the car that you qualified with.
Okay.
So if your car qualified, that's the car that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
You band-aid it together or you don't start.
Sure.
One or the other.
Yep.
Well, this dude that was in the feature won the raffle car,
Yep.
but he was already in the feature.
Right.
So they gave him $1,000 cash and said, thanks for playing.
Okay.
Kept the car.
Yeah.
And they're raffling it off again this year. So at this point, the car's pure profit.
Right.
So that's kind of cool. That you could go there and you could buy a ticket and get in the car for the first time. You go right to the main event in a fresh car. And it was built by Josh Wilkins, who's a really, really good driver there. He's so good at driving, in fact, he broke his own foot.
That is, I will say, though, that's pretty cool. The fact that you could win a car and at that point in time get in it and go compete right then and there.
If you have any driving sense at all, you have a chance at finishing in the money. There's like 24 cars on the track or something like that for the feature, and some of them were in very, very bad shape. So you just have to kind of tool around and conceivably you're in the running for $5,000.
That's pretty cool.
You got a 1 in 24 shot. You've already won a free car. I mean, how can it get any worse?
Right.
As long as you don't get hurt.
I'd say maybe take my helmet and driving jacket and go down there with a pile of cash and try and win a demolition derby car.
You only live once.
Of course, I'd have to leave it there because I'd have no way of getting it home. And,
I don't know if you get to keep the car or not. There's some places where you do.
Oh, okay.
Like if you go to Bash for Cash,
Yeah.
they raffle off a kicker class car, which is a tank. And after the derby's over, you keep it. You keep the motor, the transmission, the tires, the wheels, the bumper, the fuel tank, the tranny cooler, the transmission, and a lot of those. It'll probably have aftermarket front spindles on it. Those the aftermarket front spindles alone are $1,500. So I mean, you're bringing home. The motor is probably $8,000, transmission $3,500, rear end $3,500. You're coming home with
$25,000 car.
Yeah. I've never won that kind of money.
I tried to raffle this past weekend, and I didn't do so well. It was $225 for the ticket, and it was to win a drag car. And
It just turns out you made a donation to the cause.
I made a donation to the cause, correct. But hey, somebody won themselves a car for. Actually, the guy that won, he bought 4 tickets, so he had $900.
Wow.
He had $900 into it, but hey, he won himself a $20,000 car for $900. I mean, can't complain about that.
And then you can sell it.
Absolutely.
Or sell the other one that you're replacing.
So this guy, from what I understand, he's super excited about it.
Can I put you in? Hey, can I put you in? Yeah, so,
Yeah, like I said, my understanding is that the guy that won this car is super excited about it, and he's like, "No, I'm not selling it. It's a major award, right? I've never won a car before."
Well, if that's the case, put it in your front window, and hopefully nobody dusts it and breaks it.
Right.
Right. We've got the one and only Matt Stambaugh joining us on the line. Matt is, as his buddy Jeff Schoeman was telling me, is a wealth of knowledge on all things drag racing, but moreover as a fabricator and builder down there in Virginia, and helped orchestrate the win with driver Robin Stambaugh-Schoeman when they won at VMS over the weekend. So first and foremost, Matt, thanks for coming on the show, and congratulations on the win. That had to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. Thank you very much. My sister's been driving the funny car for a couple of years, and this was her first big win.
Had she gone over 200 before?
Nope, this was in the final, was her quickest and fastest pass was 691, 201 with a 9. So we were pretty impressed with that.
Oh, yeah. That. Now, is this the, I'm going to say it's Corvette. Is this the Corvette funny car body?
Yes, sir. Corvette funny car body. It's a nostalgia, 1979 body, nostalgia, alcohol funny car with a Linko 3-speed, regular pedal clutch. Basically drive it the same way you drive a modern top alcohol funny car.
Yep.
Rev it up and sidestep the clutch.
And I think Chris is probably looking for
We're
pictures right now. I mean, I did see a picture of it before, and I have to say that so probably my favorite funny car of all time, and my guess is I'm sure you weren't born when this funny car was driving, but was Tom Hoover's Showtime. And when I saw your funny car, that was like the very first thing I thought of, right? It's like, man, that is like almost a throwback to one of Tom Hoover's cars.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Actually, the body was manufactured by the same manufacturer in the mid-'70s, and the chassis was actually manufactured by the same manufacturer as Tom Hoover's Showtime, the first Showtime Corvette, which was predominantly white.
Yep.
And that car, and we actually own that chassis, the original Showtime chassis, actually is our spare.
That's super
Told
cool.
you. Historian.
Yeah, we paid a lot of attention in keeping it low and sleek like the 70s funny car look.
Yep.
Now, can you confirm, because I heard this body was cast from the original Snake and Mongoose cast. Is that right?
Sort of. There was only a couple of funny car body manufacturers in the 70s, and there's only a couple of guys that made just about all of them. And then the more well-funded teams would take the bodies and kind of do what they will with them for whatever they thought needed for aerodynamic purposes or to fit their chassis or whatever. So yes, it's coming from the same mold as the Mongoose,
right.
Mongoose leather car and all of his popular Indy winning cars.
Is that cool or what?
Oh, it's super cool. Yeah, I love the nostalgia funny cars, and I have to say, I was a huge funny car fan, as a kid, right? So, I mean, I got to watch basically when this style car was, state of the art. This is what I grew up watching, and super cool. And then NHRA, just like they do with everything, they wrecked it. And
alrighty then.
But I mean, what's nice is that and my guess is that I don't know if it was somebody at NHRA. It was probably a racer. My guess is it probably a racer that had one of these old funny cars sitting around and said, "Hey, I'd like to still race this thing," and probably got to talking to some of his buddies. And the next thing you know, you have the nostalgia funny car circuit, and it's super cool. I mean, I would much rather go watch a car like yours run, Matt, than I would go watch the modern day funny cars. Modern day funny cars are just boring to me. These are so much cooler.
That's I appreciate that, and that's what we try for. And call your local track owners and tell them the same thing so they can book us all in.
Right.
We've got a pretty good group of guys. The actual guy that we ran in the final down here in Virginia at Virginia Motorsports Park Sunday was from Lancaster, New York. Johnny Kwasniewski with the Pole Cow Corvette.
Oh yeah, yep.
So he's from up your guys' way.
That's right. Yep, he's been around here quite some time. Yeah, he's a long time competitor. He's done a bunch of stuff. A really interesting guy. Now the chassis that you have, is that I'm just going to take a stab in the dark. Is it a Logie chassis?
It's actually our original car that my dad first raced for a living as a nitro funny car was a Logie chassis.
Okay.
And there we have a red Corvette that's got yellow flames on it. That's actually a Logie chassis. The chassis that we're running now is a Sartay guy in the West Coast, Jaime Sarte on the West Coast, built a lot of famous cars. The Mongoose car you were talking about, the Indy winning Mongoose car, he built that.
Yep.
The Hoover car, he built that. He was a number one guy in the mid-'70s for fuel and alcohol funny cars. So he's the one that built the chassis that we're running right now.
Okay.
I think this is the Logie car.
Yeah, I would say that I would agree. I mean, yeah, you said the car, the red Corvette with the flames on the front.
That's a Logie chassis. That was a Logie chassis that my dad bought in like 1972 with actually a 71 Charger body on it, and then updated it through the years with the red body, which that body was originally the first Moby Dick funny car. If you know 70s funny cars, I'm sure you know the Moby Dick car.
Oh yeah.
And that's what that red body was. He bought it from Ezra Boggs in Oklahoma.
That's
in the 70s.
That's super cool. Now the body, I'll probably I don't know that I will. I wouldn't be able to guess the manufacturer. I'm sure I'll probably know it when I hear it. But who is the manufacturer of the body that is currently on the car that your sister won in this past weekend or a couple of weeks ago?
I'm pretty sure it was a company called G&K Fiberglass.
Okay.
From the West Coast.
Okay. All right.
Yep. They've been long since out of business, but that was the ones that made the most funny car bodies in the 70s.
Now, all the nostalgia cars these days. Well, I guess I shouldn't say that. There are some nostalgia funny cars that are running on nitromethane still, right? Just a lower mixture.
Oh yeah, quite a few. There's actually a whole circuit. You talk about NHRA. NHRA has a nostalgia circuit. They call it the Heritage Series.
Okay.
They actually have fuel funny cars at the Heritage Series. As a matter of fact, they are in Bakersfield starting today, California, and they have all weekend called the California Hot Rod Reunion.
Oh, yeah.
There'll probably be 40 of them out there.
Oh, so that's this weekend.
Yeah, that's this weekend. Those guys run out there in California. Those guys probably run 260 miles an hour plus. So they're pretty impressive for nostalgia-bodied funny cars.
Yeah, and I will say that I have watched. They generally live stream that event, and I have watched that event a couple of times, and it is super entertaining to watch.
And with the front engine top fuelers, they're crazy with their 12-inch tires. I've actually driven one of those. It's pretty impressive. They're all over the place.
So I guess the first question I have then is, why in God's name are you on the telephone with us and not out in Bakersfield right now?
Well, we got a business to run here in Virginia, and we got to keep that going. And we just came off the long weekend down at Virginia Motorsports Park with the Menards Chevy Show, so we were kind of dealing with that and just didn't want to go away. Plus, next time we go to Bakersfield, we want to take a car and go out there and race. We don't want to just watch.
No, absolutely. Yeah. It's hard to go out there when you have a piece that could compete, right, and not take it with you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We wouldn't compete with our particular car with the fuel funny cars, but we could definitely go out there and have some fun in some classes. Heck, wouldn't even matter to me what it was. We went out there and raced in Bakersfield. I've been there many times, but not racing our own car, so that's a bucket list item for us for sure.
Yeah. Do they not have? They don't have an alcohol funny car class?
They don't have an alcohol funny car class. They have a 7.0 index.
Okay.
Kind of deal, and then they have nostalgia fuel funny cars and a few things like that. But there's really the nostalgia alcohol funny car scene across the country is kind of spread out all over the place. I've actually run a 596 and 242, I think it was.
Yeah.
In Bunny Burkett's funny car. I drive her car.
Oh, okay.
I've been driving for the last 5 years, and we actually ran that. And that's pretty close, if not the fastest, pretty close to the fastest and quickest alcohol nostalgia funny car out there. And then they're all over the place. And then there's cars that run 750s and even 8-second times. So they just haven't come up with a uniform set of rules and an event to run like that to see to get everybody involved. They just kind of do a little circuit deal like we do. Yeah,
and when I would say, in your little circuit, you guys basically are traveling road shows, so pack up and
pretty
go
much.
from track to track?
Yep, pretty much. We run anywhere from 2 to 30 car shows. They have a big funny car nationals at Keystone Raceway Park in Pittsburgh.
Okay, yeah.
Every year, and they had almost 30 cars there this year. They've had over 30 in the past.
Wow.
And that's kind of an open deal, so that works out pretty good, and that's a lot of fun. We were actually number 4 qualifier there this year.
That's super cool.
Right?
Yeah.
And for the most part, the cars are fairly, and I mean, this is all relative, right? I mean, the cars are fairly economical to run, right?
Yeah, the Nostalgia Alcohol Funny Car deal, you can run 650s, 210, 215, or 220 or so, and do pretty good as long as you got your tune-up solid. You could run that relatively, right, economical. And you make some money. You come home with more than you left with, as long as you don't have any catastrophic failures, like
Right.
hanging some rods out of the side or something.
Right.
Which can happen any time.
And I mean, and I would have to guess that running something like this is going to be a lot more feasible for your normal competitor that wants to run this style of car than it would be to say run the NHRA top alcohol classes, right?
Yeah. Whole different ball game. We can use in this sort of class, like I said, down like 650s, maybe even a little bit faster. You can run older parts, stuff that you've loved and cherished and made sure it's good, and still run the numbers and do what we're doing and not break the bank. And a lot of cars that we race with actually have power glide transmissions, so that's not really any different than your 4.5 second bracket car just with a blower on it, really.
Okay, so they don't have any. So, like you said, the Nostalgia Funny Car, the alcohol Nostalgia Funny Car classes, don't have a real good, let's call it, really standard set of rules. So it's kind of
Nope.
You can pretty much run whatever you want.
Ballpark. Yep, they're all over the ballpark. Some guys have 671, some guys have 1471s, blowers. Some guys run power glide, some guys run turbo 400s. We like our car pure. We're kind of purists here, so our car's no tack, no battery. Funny car starter, pedal clutch, handbrake. You drive it just like you did in the 70s, and that's important for us, and the look too, obviously.
I think this picture that Chris has on the screen right now is actually in the pits. It looks like
Okay.
I'm guessing it's a canopy from the trailer over the top of the car, and I have to say I love this picture. I love the perspective of the photograph of your car. I love the fact that right next to it, and I can't read the side of it, but there's a Monza funny car with
total insanity next to it. This picture, it's pictures by Carlton.
Okay,
is the credit.
Yeah, so I mean the Monza funny car is sitting there with the body up next to it, and I absolutely love this picture.
Yeah, it's a pretty neat deal. We all of the Nostalgia Funny Car guys, for the most part, that's what it's all about for these guys. Getting the look, making sure the fans are like you. The attitude that you have is what we're looking for, and that works out really good. And that's Chris Mazzarella from New Jersey. Him and his wife actually have two cars, and they both drive.
Oh.
And he's a pretty good friend of ours, and we do quite a bit of racing with Chris.
And I'm assuming that one of the rules is everybody has to tow their car to the track in a crew cab dually with a 48-foot chaparral trailer.
Well, no, that's not quite the rule there.
It should be.
Not $1 a gallon now like it was in the 70s, and then 454 like to drink it down. So we did that actually up until last year. We actually had a 48-foot trailer. It wasn't a chaparral. I wish it was, but it wasn't a chaparral, but it was a 48-foot gooseneck and 88 Chevy crew cab dually square
body. There you go.
So 454. So yeah, we did that up until we got the current rig that we have now.
So you upgraded, I'm assuming, to something with a diesel in it, and
Yep. We got a Freightliner truck, toter home, and a stacker trailer, and we're planning on doing some traveling here from this point on. So we want to get not worry about being on the road anymore. We're tired of changing starters on the side of the road.
I get it. I mean, there's a reason why people have evolved from the crew cab dualies and the chaparral trailers to like you said, the Freightliner chassis with the toter homes, right? Because the fact that they're just super reliable, more fuel efficient, easier to get up and down hills, and you're not breaking down all the time. I can't tell you the number of stories.
It's a little bit of everything. The brakes, the tires,
right.
The living quarters are a big deal. A lot of events we do are 6, 7, 8, 9 hours plus away.
Yeah.
So we leave the day before. You get a little tired cruising up the road. We all work regular jobs, so we get done with our regular jobs, we hit the road, we get tired, we pull over in the rest stop and crash for a couple hours. So it really, when you're on the road, it's really the way to go. But there's nothing cooler than a square body crew cab with a sleeper and a turbo wing and a chaparral.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Of course, right now there's anybody that's basically under the age of 30 has no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah. I'm 47, so I get it. I know exactly where you're at. So I spent lots of miles and lots of time riding in that little sleeper going up and down the highway when my dad ran fuel funny car for a living all through the mid to late 70s.
Yeah, that's super cool. I would say Chris was just showing a picture of Bunny Burkett's car, which you said you drive?
Yes, sir. Yeah, the last I think this is the 6th year.
Oh, okay. Geez,
I've been driving. Yep.
Yeah, that's quite a while. Now, I guess the first question I have is, how is Bunny Burkett doing? I know that she was sick for a while, right?
Yep, she had some health issues going on, but she's rocking and rolling and fighting them all and doing real good and still out there racing. The rain killed us this year. We got 3 or 4 events just canceled on us with the weather because the rain's just killing all the racetracks this year. But other than that, everything's fine. As a matter of fact, her husband, Mo Burkett, which has been around by her side since day one, he was in my shop a little while ago. We were just talking about some of the things that he had going on here in the off season, and we actually have a race at Budds Creek MIR in Maryland next weekend, a Mopar race that we're running, which should be the last race of the year for her.
That's super cool. Chris, I mean, if you want, top-notch guest for the show, we probably have to pay her. But I would love to have Bunny Burkett on the show as well. I mean, obviously...
we might be able to help facilitate that. So
I mean,
make sure to have Chris keep in touch.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry. It is...
I guess I'll be talking to you Saturday, huh, Chris?
I believe so.
There it is. There it is. And in our side time, we go to demolition derbies and sell parts with Jeffy's Fab Farm, so we love that.
Right. Jeffy transplanted from from Canada down to Virginia to increase his derby part production.
Okay.
He builds, you name it, he builds it for demolition derby. He's one of the partners down at Cass in the Valley this weekend. That was one of the exciting things about this week, is we got to tie it all together. That not only was it 2-year anniversary, not only was it 50th show, everybody in the show is also tied up with demolition derby.
I would say, how was that?
Awesome. We love it. I love it. I tell you, I had no idea. I can't believe how cool the demolition derby stuff is, and we have a good time. We go with Jeff and help him out and really have a good time.
Jeffy helped get us in touch with Matt as well. There's a picture on your Facebook page I wanted to ask you about that was loaded. It was loaded last February, so we're going back 18 months. Mike Hanlon posted it, and it's a picture of a black, I believe it's a 57 Chevy.
Yeah, okay. We're just sitting in a driveway with some trophies in front of it?
That's the one, yep.
Yep, that was my dad's car in high school. That was actually his first car. That was his first car. So that's a picture of his first car that with some cheater slicks on the back and driving it to the track and going and racing.
I'm sure he doesn't, but please tell me he still has it.
No. He actually bought it and sold it, I think 3 times. and it was funny. We hadn't heard anything about it. It was just a 57 Chevy 2-door hardtop. But a customer came into my speed shop. We have a speed shop here in Virginia, and he came in and we got to talking. And he was from Alexandria, Virginia, which is originally where we're from. And he was talking about buying this 57 Chevy from this guy. We started talking and where he bought it from, and it turned out to be the guy that bought it from my dad last. I said, "Do you still have it?" And he's
Wow.
like, "No, sir, we don't have it anymore." He said, "We sold it to a father and son." And I was like, "Well, that's good. Nothing wrong with father-son projects."
Sure.
But doesn't Jeffy have a black 50? I think it's a 57.
55. Jeffy
55.
has a 55 barn find that had been in a barn since 1973. It had a Virginia inspection sticker on when we pulled it out. 1973 Virginia inspection, and he pulled it out of the barn, and we hosed it off, and he stuck a 550 horsepower 6.2 fuel injected LS in there, and she hauls the mail. There's no question about that.
When did he find it?
I guess it's
been 4 years.
Probably 4 years ago. Yeah, right.
Oh
right,
my God.
He had it, and I found it here in Virginia actually, and it was just on a whim. Somebody told me about an auction. I went over there to the auction, and here's his barn. And I walk in his barn, and there's a 29 Model A pickup sitting there, and there's a 55 Chevy 4-door Bel Air actually sitting there with no motor in it. And I started talking to the guy, and I knew Jeff wanted one, so left there, called him, and he said, let's do it. So we actually bought it right before the auction started.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah, it worked out great. It was a pretty cool deal. So, and he actually worked on it and did the LS swap and built it and got it all done in like 8 months, 8 weeks, right before his wedding, and drove it in his wedding up in Canada when he married my sister. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is super cool, for sure.
Yeah, it was a neat deal. A pretty neat story.
This other picture that Mike loaded back in April is, for lack of a better term, it's a dragster. There's a C10 behind it, and the gentleman standing with a car smoking a cigarette. Yeah,
that's fuel altered. And that picture is at Miami Hollywood Speedway in Florida. And my dad, that was a fuel altered that a good friend of my dad and Mike Hanlon had, and he had built for my dad. And they actually had just finished it, and they went down to Florida, and we're running it down there in Florida. And that's Mike in the picture with the white T-shirt. He's a long-time family friend. Him and my dad went to high school together. You see right next to him, the stamp says January 72.
Yeah, I see that.
Isn't that cool?
That's it. Yep, that's exactly when that was it, buddy.
Please tell me you still have that car.
That's a cool deal.
You still have that car around?
No, we never got that one. That one got sold to Texas, and then it came back again. My dad bought it back and changed the front end, and then sold it back to a guy in Oklahoma, and then we've lost track of that one too. He only ran that one a couple times, and then made some changes, and then it was time to go funny car racing. Before that, he had a front engine top fuel dragster. You keep looking at pictures of it, you'll probably see a picture of a little blonde-haired kid sitting in the seat of a front engine dragster. That's me.
Yes, I got that. I went on a quest to find the 55 actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you go on Jeffy's picture, you'll find the 55. So that was a pretty cool deal.
Now, Chris had
we've done lots of racing down here.
I say Chris had a picture of Bunny's funny car up there. Now, does she compete? Let's call it in the nostalgia funny car circuit as well.
Yes, she does. We kind of run. It's kind of a little 55. Bit different deal. She gets booked in separately than the circuit.
Okay.
So her deal is a little bit different. So she gets booked in separately, but actually some of the events we actually all run together. Earlier this year at Cecil County, Maryland, we ran Bunny's car with me driving, and our car, the family car, with Robin driving. And it was pretty neat. We were both on the same bill. We didn't run each other.
Yeah.
We separated that so I could start the car in my fire suit and then run back and hop in Bunny's car and run. But it was pretty neat that we were both on the same flyer and the same billing. And I ended up winning that race in Bunny's car, so that worked out real nice.
Bunny's not going to charge us for putting those pictures up of her car, is she?
No. It's very easy to get along with. You won't have any problems with Bunny, I can tell you that.
I say we just had the picture up of you sitting in the dragster when you were 2-3 years old.
Yeah, that was it. That was when my dad first got the car home from California. That was probably early '72, maybe late '72. I was born in '71, so yeah, I would say early '72. And you notice there's a lot of grass around there and no asphalt because he lived in a townhouse at the time. And they had just rolled it out of the trailer, and him and Mike were getting ready to disassemble it and fish it through the side window so they could build it in the living room over the winter.
That's great.
And that's exactly what happened.
That is great. That's the type of thing that you don't hear about anymore. I've heard stories from my uncle about at the races, right, needing to rebuild an engine, and it's like, all right, so they take the engine out and literally carry it into the hotel room and work on it in the hotel room one night to the next to put the thing back together, and those are the stories that you don't hear anymore. That's super cool.
Yeah, really cool. That was a big deal at Indy every year because NHRA closed the track, and It's not like today where you can stay at the track whenever you want.
That's right.
As long as you want. You actually had to leave the grounds, and so you couldn't work on your car, so all the guys just would load their cars up and take them to the motels, and the motels would be like the pits at Indy. For 30 years it was that way. Maybe 40 years it was that way. And so you'd just drive around the motels and see what all the guys were doing as far as working on their cars, and there was everybody working on their stuff.
It made the trip to go to Indy all that much more interesting, right? Because it was literally nonstop entertainment.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The whole drag racing thing with with the pit pass getting you right up on the action. That made it even better because now you're just driving around town just like you would be in your own town.
Right.
Going in the motel, oh, hey, there's a snake working on his car.
So here's a picture from way back, too. I believe this is your dad at Beach Bend back in the Division III race in '79.
That's probably, is that the Corvette or the Charger? That's probably the Corvette.
That's the Corvette.
Yep, that was the paint job before the red flame paint job. That's that same car. That's actually a Logie chassis, and that's when he was, that's actually a WCS meet. He was running a nitro funny car there. He had run there quite a bit.
So your dad, so how long did your dad run nitro for?
He started with the dragster. That front engine dragster was a top fuel dragster. And he had a cast iron 392 that he built with a 2-speed Lenco, and that was his first fuel car. And he ran that for a couple of years, and then switched it to Pro Comp when they changed the class.
Yep.
And he ran Pro Comp for a couple of years. There's a picture of him at Indy with that car. And that was a Don Long chassis, pretty famous car out from the West Coast. Anyway, then the handwriting was on the wall. Dragsters were going away. Funny cars were the next big thing. If you didn't have a funny car, you didn't get booked and you didn't get paid.
Yep.
And since he wanted to race for a living, he said, I need to buy a funny car. So that's how that happened.
Okay.
And then he ran the funny car, took the motor out of the dragster, started out with a cast iron 392 Hemi, put that in the funny car, got that together by the mid-'70s, got licensed in a funny car at Budds Creek, which is MIR in Maryland.
Yep.
Went to Summer Nationals at Englishtown and proceeded to do one of the biggest wheel stands there and got his picture all in every magazine for doing a big wheel stand.
Hey, whatever it takes.
Yeah, that's right. And then ran for a couple more years, I guess, up into the early 80s a little bit, and just kind of faded off because the points meets went away, and,
right.
and the match racing kind of went away, and that was the end of fuel car match racing. So then sat on the car for quite a few years, and actually an altered group was match raced in altereds, Bowling Alcohol altereds. So he put the car back together as an altered. We started match racing that all over the country with the Supercharged Outlaws.
I was going to say, I was going to ask if that was the super. Yeah, I was going to ask if that was the Supercharged Outlaws or the Wild Bunch.
Yeah, and he was actually the Wild Bunch. We just missed the Wild Bunch. He would have run with the Wild Bunch, but we just missed. All those guys are friends of ours, so that was a pretty neat deal. Nothing wrong with the Wild Bunch.
Yeah, so I mean, again.
Can you imagine his childhood?
No, I can't actually.
Because you've had other kind of iconic pieces come through the shop beyond just having the body from the same mold and the Showtime car. You've had some other stuff come in and out of the shop that's got some connections to significant drag racing lore.
Yeah, we actually owned one of the Mongoose bodies. That was one of his cars that he ran. It was kind of a little known car that he ran on the West Coast and had a fire and then fixed it and then sold it. So we don't, nobody wants to hear you got the funny car, the Mongoose funny car, but you know how that goes.
Yeah.
And so we got quite a few old style race cars, and that Showtime chassis, we have that, which is the car you remember, and that was the original chassis for that, and that's kind of a spare for the one we're running now. They're very similar because most of the cars were very similar in the 70s.
I'm. So when's the next RC race down south?
We're not gonna be far from them Saturday at the Derby.
Yeah, we're probably 2 hours from Woodstock.
Yeah.
I know what you're thinking. Yeah, Chop Tour, huh?
Oh, you know it. Yeah, you know it. I got to come to the shop and I got to see all these pieces for sure.
It's pretty wild, isn't it?
You'd be amazed. They're in all different places, so I don't know how big a tour would work out. We got them shoved away in every nook and cranny there is.
Yeah, that would be super, super cool. Now, one question I didn't get a chance to ask.
I think we better to go sometime when there's not a Derby that we have to get back for.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would agree. But so I was looking at Bunny's chassis.
Yes.
And it looked like a more modern chassis. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that is. She had a really, really bad crash in 1996.
Right.
At Beaver Springs, Pennsylvania. It
Yep.
almost took her life. She actually stopped breathing multiple times on the way to the hospital. Pretty bad wreck. And for the next couple of years, she recovered from that, and for the next year or two, maybe even 3, they were building a new car, and that car was built by Gordy's Race Cars in Ohio, and that's the car that not the car that we run right now, but that was the one that replaced her crash car.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's a little bit newer, similar design, but just a little bit newer. A-arm front end, motors out a little further.
Yep.
Cage is a little taller, cage is a little bit wider. The bodies always dictated the chassis. And as the bodies were getting aerodynamics, were getting to be more involved. Obviously, the 79 Corvette is nowhere near as aerodynamic as like a 2002 Dodge Avenger.
Right.
And so they were, and that's what's the same right to this day. They've just, the driver position has gone from kind of down, laid back up to a more sit-up position, and the bodies have dictated that over the years.
Yeah. Now, can I assume that your stance on the modification to bodies for aerodynamics is the same as my stance, which is you can't touch it, or you touch it, we cut your hands off type of penalty?
Well, there's a pretty big, you mentioned West Coast Nitro Nostalgia Funny Cars. There's a pretty big movement out there of, modern pro-mod looking Nostalgia Funny Car versus real Nostalgia Funny Car, and there's a big conversation back and forth. And
right.
I'm a purist, man, so I like stuff like it was. So if you got a 79 Corvette, I want it to look like a 79 Corvette. If you got a 2000 Dodge Avenger, I want it to look like a 2000 Dodge Avenger. So I'm a purist. I don't like all the modifications when they don't look like anything. It's not. That's where I'm at.
I knew I liked you. Yeah, that's exactly how I am too. Exact same way.
Right,
yeah, and
right.
The reason why NHRA Funny Car looks like it does now is because NHRA, it ends up being a slippery slope, right? I mean, it basically started with Kenny Bernstein, and then the next thing you know, this is what we got. And yeah, my opinion, you better nip that in the bud right now, because if you don't, you're going to end up basically back. 20 years from now is going to be the same thing. Yeah, they're nostalgia funny cars, and you won't be able to tell what the heck they look like.
Yeah, I guess 20 years from now they might be electric if everything goes.
Well, yeah, that's true too, right? Yeah, sure.
But yeah, it's a tough deal, and it's all been technology, and it's all moved on for the better. I can't imagine going 330 miles an hour in a 79 Corvette.
Well, me neither, but that's why you change the rules so you make it so that they can't go 330 miles an hour, right?
Yeah, I'm not too far against you on that. I'm probably in the same place as you. Maybe I'm just being a little more politically correct tonight.
yeah, you can leave all the controversial statements to me. NHRA already hates my guts, so.
That's funny. Well, I can tell you what, I went to an NHRA event this year at Virginia Motorsports Park, and it was great. They put on a really good show, and I was really pleased with the amount of, I hate to call them low buck, but lesser funded teams. I was really pleased that they don't show those guys on TV, and they just don't get the credit they deserve. And there was, probably 5 to 8, underfunded teams there, struggling to get to the next race, and that's a pretty neat deal. I always root for those guys. A lot of those guys are friends of ours. Oh
yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, it got to the point where it was ridiculous between Force and Schumacher. I mean, basically that was half the field, right? And it's like that's not how it used to be. It used to be, basically all these independent teams, and maybe you had 2 guys that were a team, but yeah, you didn't have 4-car teams, and basically just completely dominating the field and making it so that an independent team couldn't even go out there anymore.
Yeah, it's big business nowadays. There's no question about that.
Right. Yeah, and that's the one argument that's tough, is that I do realize that now you have literally hundreds of jobs that are reliant upon these teams to be able to go out and race, right? And
yeah, absolutely. There's 10 trucks and trailers on the road at any given time on a Schumacher, a Caletta, or a Force. 10 plus rigs on the road at any given time going somewhere. So pretty impressive how many people they're employing and boosting the economy of Brownsburg, Indiana, I would say.
Right, absolutely. Yep. So what do you think, Chris?
I greatly appreciate Matt coming on and admittedly short notice, but it was well worth it. I anticipate you'd be okay probably doing it again, right?
No.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll get my sister on here next time. She was tied up tonight, but we'll get my sister on here next time, and get with me, Chris. We'll talk about getting Bunny on the show.
We'll talk via social media at the minimum, but I'll probably catch up with you on Saturday.
Great, man. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. We'll see you.
We'll see you now.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Matt Stambaugh making a guest appearance here on episode 50, celebrating 2 years of the Final Round Drag Racing podcast. Appreciate him coming on and hanging out with us, on some short notice, but it was certainly good of him to come and be part of it. You know what I mean? Because there were certainly other things he could have done, and definitely saying no was one of them. But we'll have Robin on, I believe, on November the 1st. That'll be 2 weeks from now, unless you want to do something on the 28th. But I don't know if it's up to you ultimately. If you want to just clean out the whole month and get off 1 week. But
we've been on a roll here.
We got to jumpstart our rush to 100, I suppose.
So we're going to try and get to 100 by year 3. Is that what we're going to try and do? I will say that my wife might not appreciate that, but she's been pretty understanding.
For the most part. Yeah. But we could easily take a week off and then catch up with Robin on the 1st. But we'll set some stuff up. It sounds like in terms of that nostalgia funny car stuff, we've got a pretty good contact there.
It does sound that way.
It does seem that way, huh?
Yeah, and I will say the interesting thing about going into the off season like we are here is that now is the time to kind of start. I guess I'll say start talking more to the legends and drag racing history. Not that we can't do that when the racing season's going on, but when the racing season's going on, we're generally talking to people that are actively competing at that point in time. And
sure.
Now we can start talking to, like I said, people like Bunny Burkett. And okay, let's do your life story in an hour.
More or less, right?
So you're gonna try.
Usually, what happens is by the time we get to the 58-minute mark, we've gotten through 8 years.
If that. Yeah. Somebody like that, we're never. I mean, you hope that we can impress upon them enough to get them to come back, because there's no way we'll be able to cover it all in an hour.
We'll cover a lot of it.
Yeah, as much as we can.
What do you think? Stick a fork in it?
Yeah, I think we're good.
Episode 50 in the books. Thank you so much for the support that you've given us for the last 2 years, giving us the opportunity to come here on Finger Lakes 1 and talk a little bit of drag racing. We had some awesome guests in our time. We've had some folks that have been on multiple times that have come to be regulars on the show, and we couldn't do it without the listeners at home. We do appreciate the support, and I feel like this was a good way to celebrate number 50 in 2 years. It was a good episode. We appreciate it. Again, we'll be back in 2 weeks with Robin Schoeman coming up on the 1st of November. So we look forward to seeing everybody then. That's going to do it for us here at the North Park Building at Academy Square. We will see everybody next time. This has been the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. We'll see you right back here again in 2 weeks. Thanks for watching.